You lose 65% of this energy molecule by age 60. How to get it back? In 2013, a research team at Harvard Medical School published a paper that quietly shook the scientific community. They took mice that were the equivalent of 60-year-old humans in terms of biological age, slow, muscle-depleted, with poor circulation and declining organ function. Then they gave those mice a precursor to a single molecule for just 1 week. Within 7 days, the muscle tissue of those older mice looked under a microscope like the muscle tissue of mice that were 6 months old. Their vascular function improved, their energy output increased. The researchers described the reversal as equivalent to a 60-year-old human having the physiology of a 20-year-old in 1 week. The molecule at the center of that experiment was NAD+, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And if you have never heard of it, you are not alone. Most people outside of research laboratories have not. But that is changing fast because the science around NAD+ has become one of the most actively funded and rapidly developing areas in the entire field of aging biology. Here's the problem. By the time you reach 50, your NAD+ levels are roughly half of what they were at 20. By 60, they may be down to a third, and that decline, quiet, invisible, showing up on no standard blood panel your doctor orders, touches virtually every system in your body. Today, I'm going to explain exactly what NAD+ is, what happens when it runs out, what the current research says about restoring it, and what you can do right now with food, lifestyle, and targeted support to protect this molecule that your body cannot function without. We will dive into all of that in today's episode. I'm Dr. Alexander Wellrich. I have spent 3 decades watching patients age, and more importantly, watching some patients age far better than others. The ones who maintain their energy, their cognitive sharpness, their physical resilience well into their 60s and 70s are not just lucky. Something is working differently at the cellular level. And increasingly, the research is pointing to NAD+ as one of the central reasons why. This is not a supplement advertisement. I have no financial relationship with any company that sells NAD+ precursors, and I'm going to give you the full picture: what the science supports, where the evidence is still developing, and what you can do without spending a dollar if that is where you are right now. My philosophy has always been the same. Understand the mechanism, address the root cause, start with food and lifestyle before anything else. NAD+ fits perfectly into that framework. If this kind of honest, research-based conversation is valuable to you, please subscribe to this channel. And now, let us talk about the molecule that may be more central to how you age than almost anything else your doctor has ever mentioned. Let me start at the beginning because I want you to actually understand this, not just hear a list of benefits. NAD+ stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. It is a coenzyme, which means it is a helper molecule that enzymes in your body need in order to do their work. And the work it helps with is foundational, not peripheral, foundational. First and most importantly, NAD+ is essential to energy production. Inside your mitochondria, those cellular power plants we discussed in our first episode, NAD+ sits at the very center of the process that converts the food you eat into ATP, the molecule your cells actually run on. Without adequate NAD+, your mitochondria cannot produce energy efficiently. Full stop. Second, NAD+ activates a family of proteins called sirtuins. You may have heard of sirtuins in the context of longevity research. They are sometimes called the longevity genes. Sirtuins regulate DNA repair, control inflammation, manage stress responses, and govern what researchers call epigenetic aging, the rate at which your cells accumulate damage and dysfunction. They cannot do any of that without NAD+. Think of NAD+ as the key that turns the sirtuin engine on. Third, NAD+ is essential to the activity of PARP enzymes, proteins that detect and repair damage to your DNA. Every day, your DNA sustains thousands of breaks and lesions from normal metabolic activity, UV exposure, and environmental toxins. PARP enzymes rush to the site of damage and orchestrate repair. They use NAD+ to do it. When NAD+ is depleted, DNA repair slows, damage accumulates, cells age faster. Dr. David Sinclair at Harvard Medical School, one of the world's leading researchers in this field, has described NAD+ decline as one of the primary causes of why we age, not a symptom of aging, a cause of it. That is a significant distinction. And here is the number that puts everything in perspective. A study published in Cell Metabolism measured NAD+ levels across different age groups and found that levels in muscle tissue decline by approximately 65% between the ages of 45 and 65. Not a gradual trickle, a significant, measurable collapse within a 20-year window that corresponds almost exactly to when most people start noticing the changes they attribute to simply getting older. Now let me translate that cellular reality into what it actually feels like in your daily life. Because NAD+ decline does not show up as a lab result your doctor flags. It shows up as experience. The first thing most people notice is a change in energy. Not tiredness in the way that a bad night's sleep makes you tired, but a deeper, more structural fatigue. A sense that the engine is running at reduced capacity even when you are rested. This maps directly to mitochondrial inefficiency caused by NAD+ depletion. The second is muscle loss and reduced physical resilience. Sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass, accelerates significantly after 50, and NAD+-dependent sirtuins play a direct role in muscle maintenance and repair. A study published in Nature Communications found that restoring NAD+ levels in older mice significantly improved muscle function and reversed markers of muscle aging. The mice could run farther, recover faster, and showed improved muscle fiber integrity compared to controls. The third is cognitive change. Many people over 50 describe a subtle but noticeable shift in mental sharpness. Words that take longer to find, concentration that requires more effort, a processing speed that feels slightly slower. NAD+ fuels the brain's energy-intensive operations and supports the neuronal DNA repair mechanisms that keep brain cells functioning properly. Research published in Cell Reports found that NAD+ supplementation improved cognitive function and reduced neuroinflammation in aging animal models. The fourth is metabolic slowdown. NAD+ regulates the activity of SIRT1 and SIRT3, two sirtuin proteins that govern fat metabolism, insulin sensitivity, and mitochondrial efficiency. When NAD+ declines, these regulators go quiet, and the metabolic changes that many people over 50 experience, weight that accumulates around the abdomen despite no change in eating habits, blood sugar that becomes harder to control, are partly a consequence. And the fifth, which surprises most people, sleep quality. NAD+ influences the circadian clock, your body's internal 24-hour timing system, through its role in sirtuin activation. When NAD+ declines, circadian rhythm regulation weakens, contributing to the lighter, more fragmented sleep that becomes increasingly common after 50. None of these changes are inevitable, they are biochemical, and biochemistry can be influenced. A few years ago, I worked with a patient I will call Dennis. He was 64, a former firefighter from Phoenix, Arizona. Strong man his whole life, proud of his physical capability. He came in because, as he described it, he felt like he was operating at 60%, and nobody could tell him why. His standard blood work was normal, his thyroid was fine, his testosterone was on the lower end of normal but not flagged as deficient. His doctor had told him this was just what getting older felt like. When we looked at Dennis's lifestyle and built a more complete picture, NAD+ depletion fit the pattern precisely. Years of shift work, which chronically disrupts circadian rhythm and accelerates NAD+ decline. A diet very low in NAD+ precursor nutrients. Chronic, low-grade sleep deprivation. High physical demand through his working years, placing extraordinary stress on his cellular repair systems. We addressed his NAD+ support through 3 angles simultaneously. Dietary changes to increase precursor intake, a sleep and circadian rhythm protocol, and a targeted supplementation approach we will discuss shortly. Within 3 months, Dennis told me he felt like he had gone from 60% back to 85%. He was not 30 again, but the structural fatigue had lifted meaningfully, and his physical output in the gym had improved in ways that surprised even him. And here is where the science gets genuinely exciting. Because in the last 5 years, researchers have identified specific, accessible ways to support NAD+ levels that go well beyond anything we had available even a decade ago. Let me start with the foundation, because before we talk about any supplementation, I want to give you the food and lifestyle picture. These are the inputs that support your body's own NAD+ production, and they cost nothing beyond what you would spend on a healthy diet anyway. NAD+ is synthesized in your body primarily from precursor molecules, the main ones being tryptophan, niacin, also called vitamin B3, and 2 forms of B3 called nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide. Your diet directly determines how much of these precursors are available. Foods rich in NAD+ precursors include turkey and chicken breast, which are among the highest dietary sources of tryptophan and niacin. Tuna and salmon, which provide substantial niacin alongside their anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids. Mushrooms, particularly cremini and portobello, which contain meaningful amounts of niacin and have shown in preliminary research to support NAD+ metabolism. Edamame and green peas, which provide nicotinamide riboside in small but real amounts. Cow's milk and dairy products, which research published in Nature Metabolism identified as containing measurable levels of nicotinamide riboside, one of the most direct NAD+ precursors. Beyond diet, the lifestyle factors that most powerfully support NAD+ production are ones you have heard me discuss before, because they are foundational across virtually every system in the body. Exercise, particularly resistance training combined with some aerobic activity, activates AMPK, an enzyme that directly upregulates NAD+ biosynthesis. A study published in Cell Metabolism found that endurance exercise increased NAD+ levels in muscle tissue significantly, and that this increase was directly correlated with improvements in mitochondrial function. Caloric restriction and time-restricted eating both activate sirtuins and reduce the consumption of NAD+ by PARP enzymes, because when you are not constantly processing excess calories, your DNA sustains less oxidative damage and needs less repair. Less repair demand means more NAD+ available for energy production and sirtuin activation. And reducing alcohol consumption is one of the most impactful single changes many people can make. Alcohol metabolism consumes NAD+ at a significant rate. Every molecule of ethanol your liver processes depletes your NAD+ pool. For people who drink regularly, this represents a substantial ongoing drain on a resource that is already declining with age. Now let me address the supplement question directly because I know many of you are wondering about it, and I want to give you the honest, scientific picture rather than either dismissing it or overhyping it. There are 2 NAD+ precursor supplements that have received the most rigorous human clinical research. Nicotinamide riboside, commonly called NR, and nicotinamide mononucleotide, commonly called NMN. Both are forms of vitamin B3 that your body can convert directly into NAD+. Both have been shown in human clinical trials to raise blood NAD+ levels measurably. The question, and researchers are still working on this, is whether raising blood NAD+ levels translates into the tissue-level benefits seen in animal studies. For NR, a randomized controlled trial published in Nature Communications found that oral supplementation with 1,000 milligrams per day of nicotinamide riboside increased NAD+ levels in whole blood by an average of 60% in healthy middle-aged and older adults. A separate trial published in Cell Reports Medicine found that NR supplementation improved muscle NAD+ metabolism in older men and women after just 21 days. For NMN, a human clinical trial published in Science in 2021, conducted by researchers at Washington University School of Medicine, found that NMN supplementation improved muscle insulin sensitivity, increased physical activity, and improved muscle performance in postmenopausal women. This was a small but well-designed randomized controlled trial. I want to be honest with you. The human evidence, while promising and growing rapidly, is not yet at the level where I can tell you with complete certainty that supplementing with NR or NMN will produce the dramatic results seen in mouse studies. The biology of mice and humans differs in important ways, and translating animal findings to human outcomes takes time and rigorous research. What I can tell you is that both molecules appear safe at studied doses, that they reliably raise NAD+ levels in the blood, and that the mechanistic rationale for their benefit is extremely solid. For people over 50 who are interested in this area, the current evidence is encouraging enough that a conversation with your physician about whether supplementation is appropriate for you is entirely reasonable. If you choose to explore NR or NMN, the doses studied in human trials range from 250 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams per day. Quality and purity vary significantly between manufacturers. Look for products that have been third-party tested and, as always, discuss with your doctor before beginning any new supplement regimen, particularly if you take medications or have underlying health conditions. I want to spend a few minutes on the broader picture, because NAD+ is not just about energy and fatigue. Its role in the sirtuin system connects it to some of the most fundamental processes of biological aging. Sirtuins are a family of 7 proteins, SIRT1 through SIRT7, that function as master regulators of cellular health. They govern gene expression, control the inflammatory response, regulate autophagy, the cellular recycling process we discussed in our mitochondria episode, and manage what researchers call the epigenome, the system of chemical tags on your DNA that determines which genes are turned on and which are silenced. Epigenetic aging, sometimes called your biological age as distinct from your chronological age, is now measurable through what scientists call methylation clocks. These tests look at patterns of chemical modification on your DNA and can estimate how old your cells are behaving, regardless of how many birthdays you have had. Research from Harvard and other institutions has found that NAD+ levels, sirtuin activity, and epigenetic age are tightly linked. Higher NAD+, more active sirtuins, younger behaving cells. Dr. Sinclair's research has proposed that aging is fundamentally an information problem, that our cells lose access to the epigenetic instructions that keep them functioning youthfully, and that restoring NAD+ and sirtuin activity may be one of the most direct ways to partially restore that information. This is cutting-edge science, not settled consensus, but it is being published in the most rigorous journals in biology, and it is being taken seriously by the scientific community in a way that fringe ideas simply are not. What it means practically is this. Supporting your NAD+ levels is not just about having more energy tomorrow. It is about maintaining the cellular machinery that keeps your DNA properly expressed, your inflammation controlled, your repair systems functional, and your biological age as close as possible to your chronological age, or younger. Here is what you can do starting this week. 1. Build your diet around NAD+ precursor foods: turkey, chicken, tuna, salmon, cremini mushrooms, edamame, and whole milk or dairy products should be regulars on your plate. These are not exotic ingredients. They are foods most Americans already enjoy. The goal is intentionality about including them consistently. 2. Prioritize resistance training at least twice a week. Lifting weights, resistance bands, bodyweight exercises, whatever form works for your joints and your life. Research is clear that resistance exercise is one of the most powerful triggers of NAD+ biosynthesis in muscle tissue. It also directly counteracts sarcopenia, the muscle loss that NAD+ decline contributes to. 3. Implement a consistent eating window, 10 to 12 hours, same time every day. This reduces the PARP-mediated consumption of NAD+ that comes from constant caloric processing and DNA repair demand from oxidative stress. 4. Protect your sleep with the same seriousness you give to diet and exercise. 7 to 8 hours, consistent timing, darkness, and cool temperature. Your circadian clock and your NAD+ system are deeply interconnected. Every night of good sleep is a night of cellular restoration. 5. Reduce or eliminate alcohol if NAD+ restoration is a priority for you. I recognize this is a personal choice, but the biochemistry is clear. Regular alcohol consumption is one of the fastest ways to deplete the NAD+ pool you are working to protect. 6. Have a conversation with your physician about NAD+ precursor supplementation. Bring up NR and NMN specifically. Ask whether the current evidence supports a trial period for your situation. This is an informed, reasonable conversation to have, and if your physician is not familiar with the research, the studies I have referenced today are a starting point you can bring to the appointment. Let me bring everything together. NAD+ is not a wellness trend. It is a fundamental molecule that sits at the center of energy production, DNA repair, inflammation regulation, and the activity of the sirtuin proteins that govern biological aging. Its decline after 50, measurable, significant, and largely invisible to standard medical testing, is one of the most important biochemical changes happening in your body right now. The good news is that this decline is not fixed. It is influenced by what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, and, potentially, by targeted supplementation that is being studied with increasing rigor in human clinical trials. We are living through a remarkable moment in aging science. The research being published right now in Cell, Nature, Science, and Cell Metabolism is changing our understanding of why we age and what we can do about it. I believe it is my responsibility to bring that science to you in language you can use. Not 3 years from now, but today. If today's episode gave you something useful, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment. Tell me, had you heard of NAD+ before today? I would genuinely love to know. And in our next episode, we are going to tackle something that affects the vast majority of people over 50 and almost nobody talks about directly: the dramatic loss of muscle mass after 50. What is driving it at the cellular level, why the standard advice about protein is incomplete, and what the research says about genuinely preserving your strength and physical independence as you age. It is one of the most important topics I will cover on this channel. Do not miss it. Until then, take care of yourself from the inside out.